Welcome everybody to today's webinar. Who moved the cheese? My Cheese Workbook. My name is Christopher Sanderson. I'm a senior member with IEEE as well as a Eta Kappa Nu member. I'm also the Houston section chair as well as the South, I'm supposed to say South area chair. So welcome to today's webinar. Just want to give a little bit more of introduction of who I am. I've been working with a lot of different companies as an organizational leadership effectiveness coach, as well as a practitioner. I am a U.S. Army veteran with multiple honorable tours of duty. And when I was in the military, I always lived by the motto, mission first, people always. I'm very passionate about enabling people to live a better life, a better VOCA life in a VOCA world, which stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. But I'm most proud of my time right now as the Region 5 South Area Chair, as well as the Houston Section Chair. I've been given the opportunity to support the future leaders that will be advancing technology for humanity tomorrow. Let's start off with a little bit of a Dilbert cartoon here. I'm going to give you my best interpretation of Dilbert, so bear with me here. I'm telling you, if nobody gets a raise, half of the engineers will quit. That's the goal. We're trying to reduce our headcount by 50%. But all the smart people will leave. Would you mind organizing a goodbye potluck lunch for them? Sometimes we feel that way, especially in today's economy and the dynamics that we're dealing with. Let's look at another Dilbert cartoon here. Our CEO's goal is to improve our revenue per employee. So I'm going to fire you and bring you back as a contractor. Last week, his goal was to reduce the number of contractors so you can call my contract and hire me as an employee. Well, looks like someone doesn't like having his cheese moved, which brings us in today's presentation. So let's talk about who moved my cheese a little bit. And I have to give credit where credit is due. It was written by Dr. Spencer Johnson in September of 1998, and it's sold over 30 million copies worldwide, and in 37 languages has been translated to. It's been a New York Times bestseller multiple times, and I just want to share a little bit of about what I've learned with the book. Things to think about here. Cheese is a metaphor for whatever nourishes us, whether it's a good job, a loving relationship, or peace of mind. The maze represents where you spend time looking for what you want. The workbook is our metaphor for working through our experiences and discussions pertaining to change. Change is a law of life, and those who look only to the past and present are certain to miss the future. By John F. Kennedy. So this is a little disclaimer here. Who My Cheese, as well as Out of the Maze, are all copyrighted and trademarked, and the rights of the author and their companies. They are mentioned for educational purposes only. Please do not copy, save, or reproduce this information. So, we'll come to our first poll here. If you could help me out here. Are you an IEEE member? Please answer yes or no. We're not going to take 5 minutes, but we'll take at least 1 minute to get a good majority of the people who's on the call. Joe, just let me know when you have enough. go ahead and close that poll out right there. The reason that I asked that question, and Daryl's going to share the results of that poll later on, but pre-registration for this webinar, 35% of the people were IEEE members, and over 65% of the people were not IEEE members. Another interesting fact that we have, that we had people from 10 different countries participating, and over 50% of those that registered are from Texas.
Hey, Chris, can I interrupt you? Were you able to see the results?
Yes, sir, we were. Yes, sir, yes, sir, I am.
Okay, cool.
We have only 22% or 22 people did not answer. And the great majority of the people that's on this particular live session is 74 that, yes, they are IEEE members. That's good. So let's move on to the next part here. Have you ever read the book, Who Moved My Cheese? Please answer yes or no. And we're going to take about another minute for everyone to be able to respond.
I think most people have answered, so I'm closing the poll.
That'll be great. Thank you. The second, or actually the third question I have for you. Will you share this story or WebEx information with a friend, family, or colleague? Please answer a yes or no.
1 second. Can you see the results of the second poll?
Not yet.
Can you see them now?
Yes, sir, I can.
All right, cool. All right.
For the second poll, we have the majority of people have not read the book, and about a third of them have read the book. It's good.
All right. Moving on to the third poll.
And so some of you may be asking, why are we asking these questions? My goal for this webinar is not to read the book to you. So I have been able to incorporate some videos, but I am also encouraging you to definitely purchase the book, read it, and start your own journal with the book. Also share the book with a family member or friend or a colleague. I've purchased quite a few books over the years, and I actually give one to each of my mentees that I work with, as well as certain colleagues at work. So it is definitely a book that keeps on giving. You have the results of the third poll there?
You should be able to see them now.
Yes, sir. Okay, so they will share. So the great majority of people will be sharing this story or the webinar information. That's great. That's good to hear. So let's get started here. So the pre-registration, there was about 48% of the people had not read the book, and only about 45% of them said they would share it with a friend, family, or a colleague. So that gives us some good information to really compare. So you have to forgive me. I am a Lean Six Sigma black belt, as well as a Six Sigma certified black belt, and I like to understand the data of anything I'm doing and working with. So with that being said, let's get into the video here.
Who Moved My Cheese? by Spencer Johnson is one of the top-selling business books of the past decade. It's a charming and entertaining book that uses a fable to show how to handle change, which can be stressful in work and life. In the book's foreword, management expert Ken Blanchard says, "Cheese is a metaphor for what we want in life, be it a job, a relationship, money, or organizational success. We spend time seeking what we want in the maze. In the book, the maze is a literal one. Our task," he says, "is to learn to change or move with the cheese in a way that helps us get what we really want, especially in these times of rapid change." The book is in 3 sections. 1. A gathering. It's a class reunion about trying to deal with changes in their lives. 2. The actual story of Who Moved My Cheese, which is the fable the people at the reunion read. And 3. The discussion, or a talk about how they are going to use the story in their work and lives. Let's get into the book. We begin with The Gathering. The book begins with a lunch gathering of former classmates in Chicago the day after their high school reunion. All are trying to cope with unexpected changes, and most of them admit they aren't great at handling them. Michael shares how he used to fear change in his business until he heard a funny little story called Who Moved My Cheese. Once he passed the story around to people in his company, the business did much better, and it altered how Michael looked at change. Now, we move into the heart of the book. The story. Who Moved My Cheese? The story features 2 mice named Sniff and Scurry, and 2 little people who are as small as mice named Hem and Haw. Every day they put on jogging suits and running shoes and hit the maze in search of cheese. One day they all find cheese at Cheese Station C. Hem and Haw believed that having cheese makes you happy. Once they found cheese at Cheese Station C, they got very comfortable and expected the cheese to always be there. They took the cheese for granted and even moved their homes closer, creating, unfortunately, a false sense of security. They assumed their hard work in finding the cheese justified an endless supply of it. Sniff and Scurry behaved differently. They followed their instincts and paid attention to small changes. They did not cling to beliefs about how things should be. One morning, when Cheese Station C had no more cheese, they quickly went off in search of new cheese. At the lack of cheese, Hem and Haw freaked out. Happiness, they thought, was connected to finding the cheese where they expected to find it, and they believed that if your cheese is important, you must hold on to it. "Who moved my cheese?" Hem yelled. "This is so unfair." Even when there was no cheese, they kept coming back morning after morning, expecting to find cheese, but they didn't. Finally, Haw started to laugh at himself. Haw suggested that they maybe go and find new cheese, but Hem doesn't agree. What they don't know is Sniff and Scurry already found a huge supply of cheese at Cheese Station N as they searched the maze for new cheese. Haw realizes the old cheese isn't going to show up and that it was time to start another search. He felt more alive when he decided to move on. He left a note for Hem. "If you do not change, you can become extinct." And what would you do if you weren't afraid? As Haw journeys out into the maze, he writes messages to himself, hoping Hem will see them and understand the wisdom he is trying to share. Recalling the cheese at Cheese Station C, Haw admits that the cheese had gotten smaller and older and didn't taste good. Change would not have taken him by surprise had he watched what was happening and anticipated change. He wrote, "Smell the cheese often so you know when it is getting old." Although he felt fear, Haw moved in a new direction. He began trusting what lay ahead, even though it was unknown. He felt good and wondered why. Then he knew why and wrote, "When you move beyond your fear, you feel free." In the maze, Haw started having fun. He imagined eating the many cheeses he liked and imagined enjoying the tastes of new cheese. Then he wrote, "Imagining myself enjoying new cheese leads me to it." On his journey, Haw found bits of new cheese and began to get stronger. He wanted to go back to see if Hem would come along. As he did this, he wrote, The quicker you let go of old cheese, the sooner you find new cheese. When he got back to Cheese Station C, he offered him new cheese, but him said he didn't think he'd like it because it was not what he was used to. Because he was not ruled by fear and didn't feel as weak as he did when he stayed in Cheese Station C with no cheese, Hall ventured back out on his own. He realized it is safer to search in the maze than remain in a cheeseless situation. Hall realized the fear you let build up in your mind is worse than the situation that actually exists. He'd been so afraid of never finding new cheese that he didn't start looking. Now, just looking was becoming exciting. His beliefs were evolving. He no longer believed that cheese should stay in one place or change was wrong. Hall believed relocated cheese and change were natural, whether expected or not. He then wrote, "Old beliefs do not lead you to new cheese." Hall saw that new beliefs encouraged new behaviors. He knew that when you change what you believe, you change what you do. You can believe change will hurt you, or that new cheese will help you embrace change. Hall then wrote, "When you see you can find and enjoy new cheese, you change course." By this time, Hall saw if he had embraced change sooner and left Cheese Station C earlier, he'd be in better shape. Finally, he hoped him would read the handwriting on the wall and find his way. Hall wrote, "Noticing small changes early helps you adapt to bigger changes to come." Just as Hall was letting go of the past and adapting to the future, he found new cheese. Cheese Station Inn had piles of cheese of all kinds. Sniff and Scurry were there too. Hall jumped into the new cheese and ate a ton. Finally, Hall summarizes what he has learned and leaves it for him and for the reader. It's called The Handwriting on the Wall. Here it is. And lastly, the discussion. After Michael was done telling the story, him and his classmates agreed to get together and talk about the story as it applied to some of their own experiences in work and life. We at Calibrain invite you to click on the Participate button to see some of what these classmates discussed, as well as add your thoughts on how you see yourself in the story of Who Moved My Cheese? Who Moved My Cheese by Spencer Johnson is a fun and enjoyable read that will prepare you to handle change and position you for the reality of continual, ongoing change in your work and life. The book takes less than an hour to read, but its impact and wisdom will last much, much longer. Pick up a copy to get all the details that were not in our review. You will be glad you did. Thanks for watching, and leave us a comment below to let us know what you thought about this book review.
So with that being said, things that's needed for today's webinar is that you are going to have an open mind for the purposes as well as the willingness to be honest and have some self-reflection. You will need a pen and paper for which the beginning of your workbook journal will begin. And the last thing that you're going to need is some time to really take the opportunity to read the book. And if you read it before, please reread it again. So let's look at part one of the book, Who Moved the Cheese? My Cheese Workbook Journal. Part one is going to be us gathering today as IEEE members as well as friends and discussing the book. And part two is going to be the story, and part three is going to be some discussion points towards the end. So part one. It's a gathering of us on this WebEx to talk about Who Moved the Cheese, our Cheese Workbook Journal. Sharing about changes in our lives, especially during this time. We begin with our baseline story, Who Moved My Cheese? In today's environment, things don't necessarily turn out like we planned. So who really likes to deal with change? Not probably a lot of us. We're creatures of our own habit. So what are some of the consequences if we don't change? I'm reminded by an old quote that you can either change or die. Choice is ours. We're going to begin with some upfront and honest discussions about fear and the changes within our lives. And we're going to take the willingness to really share and be honest of how others may benefit. So, the workbook is a metaphor for us working through our experiences from the discussion pertaining to change. Cheese is the metaphor for whatever nourishes us, whether it's good, a good job, a loving relationship, or peace of mind. So, this is the first part. I hope that you have your pen and paper ready. Cheese. What we want. What do you want to have in life? Gerald, could you make sure to type that question and see if you're getting responses back, please? And I'm just looking for some short answers here. What do you want out of life? So let's move on to the maze. The maze represents where we spend our time from what you want out of life. So the second question in our journal. Where do you spend your time looking for what you want? So reflecting on that, what do you want out of life, and where do you want to spend the majority of your time for it? Did you get some responses already?
For the first question, obviously, I got balance in terms of answering the first question. What do you want out of life? Balance and some challenges. And there have been no responses. If you want to respond to the questions, please do so in the chat pod. I want to be the best self in all aspects, is from the second question.
Okay, good. We're going to continue on. That's some good feedback. So, cheese. Said that cheese is a metaphor for what we want out of life, whether it's a good job, a relationship, more money, a big house, freedom, health, recognition, spiritual peace, or even the activity like jogging, or for me, it's a better golf game. Each of us has our own idea of what cheese is, and we pursue it because we believe it makes us happy. If we get it, we often become attached to it. And if we lose it, we're often, or it's taken away, it's kind of traumatic to us. I guess there's some things to think about here. So, our next poll question.
Let me work.
We were talking about the metaphors earlier. We shared about the maze. What does the maze represent? A, hardship, B, choices, C, life, or D, friendship? Let's continue on with the rest of them as well, since they're here. The characters in the book represent A, various views of anger, different reactions to change, different reactions to a problem, or D, various seasons of life. And the third question I have for you. Him and Hall were A, little people, B, donkeys, C, cats, or D, mice. The two mice were named A, Him and Sniff, or B, Sniff and Scurry, or C, Him and Haw, or D, Scurry and Haw. Take a few more minutes to answer those questions. We'll continue on here. Daryl, what do you think the percentage of people will get all four of those questions correct? I'm going to be guessing. I'm going to be guessing probably around 35 to 50%.
Well, I think those who read the book obviously should have a better feel for it, things like that.
As we continue on through this, I do have some information about different passages in the book. You want to go ahead and close out the poll by now?
I'm so sorry. It takes about 20 minutes to close once that, so it gives you a time remaining. So we have about 10 seconds before the poll closes.
Okay.
You should be able to see the results.
All right, thank you, sir. Well, for question number 1 in this poll, the maze represents C, life. Absolutely. The great majority of the people, well, about a third of the people got that part right. And question number 2, the characters in the book represent B is the correct answer, which the majority of people got. The different reactions to change. That's good. And for the third question here, him and Hall were A, little people. Wow. Let's look at the last question. The 2 mice were named. The answer is Sniff and Scurry. Interesting. Okay. Well, it tells us that we definitely have to make sure to read the book, or as well as make sure to have the video properly ready for everybody. So let's continue on here. Let's talk about the little people as well as the mice. The little people in the book were him and Haw, and the mice were named Sniff and Scurry. So what images come to mind based on the names and the characters? This is the time that you keep an open mind, as well as use your journal that you started. Share your ideas. Let's talk about the differences in the characters here. The little people were complex thinkers. They used reason. They were ignorant to change in surroundings, not prepared for change, and did not change with the environment. The mice, however, were simple thinkers. They used their instincts and was aware of changes in their surroundings. When the environment changed, they changed with it. So with that being said, what did each group do when they came to Cheese Station C each day as the days went on? What they did was that they continued to look at their surroundings. How the little people responded and how the mice responded was very interesting. The little people, him and Haw, thought that the cheese would be there. The mice themselves saw the reduction of the cheese, and they started thinking about where new cheese could be. So let's look at that a little bit closer. So we have him and Haw, and him is the one that denies that change, denies the change, and his fears will lead to something worse. Haw, who learns to adapt to changing times when he sees change, and he leads him to something better. Sniff sniffs out the change early, and Scurry is the one that takes action. So you think about that for a moment here. Which character describes your own personality style? Are you him, the person that denies change, or Haw, who learns to adapt to change, or Sniff, that sees change early, or Scurry, who springs into action? I think at times we're a combination of all 4 characters from a personality style standpoint. But this also goes to tell us about people that we have in our teams and groups that may also respond a certain way to change. They may respond like him, or they may respond like ha, or sniff, or scary. So it's important to understand those characters, both from within for yourself, as well as your fellow team colleagues. So, I'm not sure if you have this part of the poll, but I'm going to skip this part, and I'm going to keep going forward since it took so much time earlier, okay? So, the morning the Stiff and Scary arrived at Cheese Station C, they discovered that there was no more cheese. They weren't surprised, since they had noticed the supply of cheese had been getting smaller every day. They were prepared for the inevitable and knew instinctively what to do. They were quickly off in search of new cheese. Later in the same day, him and Haw arrived. What? No cheese? Who moved my cheese? It's not fair, Him yelled. They went home that night hungry and discouraged. But before they left, Haw wrote on the wall, change happens. They keep moving the cheese. So, I'm not sure if you can get this part of the poll questions up, but I think it's very important so that we can understand it, where everybody is in reference to the book here. The characters in the book represent what? A, various views of anger. B, different reactions to change. C, different reactions to problems. Or D, various seasons of life. And since we have the poll up, let's take a look at all the other questions as well. Question 1, the writing on the wall represents A, graffiti, B, life lessons, C, a grocery list, which includes toilet paper and sanitizer, or D, steps to make change easier. Question number 2, the 4 characters in the book were him and Haw, Sniff and Scurry, or B, him and Haw, Sniff and Scary, or C, him and her, Snuff and Scary, or D, him and her, Sniff and Scurry. The third question in the poll, the characters who wrote on the wall, the character that wrote on the wall was A, Sniff, B, Haw, C, him, or D, Scurry. And our fourth question, the characters who were the first to leave Cheese Station C was Sniff and Scurry, B, him and Haw, C, Bert and Ernie, or D, Moe and Larry. So take a few more seconds there to complete those, and we'd love to get the results. Just let me know when they're ready here.
People are responding. I'm going to give it about 20 more seconds before I close the poll.
I think this is going to be pretty defining the results of this poll.
Yeah. I think you're the.
So Daryl, I'm curious. The writing on the wall represents what, do you think? Don't say grocery list.
Step D. Actually, I have the answers. I could look, but
oh, don't cheat now. Don't cheat. Don't cheat. But it's kind of interesting from our audience that Well, I hate to see that the great majority of them did not answer, or I should say about half of them did not answer, but it was actually the answer is D, steps to make change easier. And for question number 2, the 4 characters in the book were actually A, which is correct, which is good. The great majority of people did answer correctly there. That's good. Which would be him, Hall, Sniff, and Scurry. And question number 3 in the poll, the characters, excuse me, that wrote on the wall was actually Hall. Interesting. Everybody got that right. That's good. That's good. And the characters who were first to leave Cheese Station C was good. A, Sniff and Scurry. Thank you, everyone, for participating in that part of the poll. We're going to keep going here throughout the rest of our presentation here. So, the more important your cheese is to you, the more you want to hold on to it. You think about that for a moment there. The more important your cheese is, the more you want to hold on to it. So, let's talk about this portion of the webinar here. We talk about no cheese. When the cheese was gone, so were the mice. So think about that. So let's reflect upon the different reactions of the mice and little people. Unfortunately, we did not get a chance to have sound to our video, but the mice went out and sought and looked for additional cheese. The little people, especially Hall, was a little reluctant to move and look for more cheese. So life is 10% of what happens to you and 90% of how you respond to it. I really believe that's so true. So when change happens, is a sudden as we think, or are there clues? Excuse me. When change happens, is it sudden or as we think, or are there clues? I think a lot of times there are clues there. The question is, are we paying attention to those clues? So I would like for you to definitely write that down in your journal and to see, are there normally clues there to those challenges in our lives? Or is it all of a sudden something just happened? So let's continue to talk about a cheeseless station here. Accept the situation. Is this cheese gone? I think that we can relate that to right now in our present lives. Accepting the situation and understanding that life before where we currently are from a crisis standpoint has changed or altered the way that we respond, the way that we work, the way that we will do things in the future. Remember your journey. You had to find the cheese the last time, and you did it. What do you need to do now? Well, I think that goes right back to, this is not the first time we've seen change or challenging times. It's definitely not going to be the last. So the question is, what did we do before that got us through that change? And what do we need to do now to move forward? It's always important to reflect on our sources. There's always been cheese. There's always been changes in life. It's important for us to block the naysayers, folks that fear and negative thoughts that they want to only want you, Hall, live in. Have faith. You will find new cheese if you start to search on it. Visualize success. This is cheesiest. So, this part of our journal, what does it look like? I know for many of us, it could be loss of job, probably loss of a family member. It also means having to go back to school and update your skills. We're going to talk a little bit more about that later on. So, the journey is amazing. The journey is important as a destination. So we have to sit here and think about our journey and where we are and understand what our end destination is. And for some of us, it could be a new job opportunity, working in a different environment, or even living with a loved one who's no longer with us. You can go faster sooner if you get rid of old fears. I think that's very important. You can go faster sooner by getting rid of your old fears. What are some of those old fears? Are they still relevant in today's time? As you proceed, you'll find morals of a new cheese along the way. It's the promise of what lies ahead that's in front of us. Everyone has to find new cheese for themselves. Be supportive, leave a trail of crumbs that can be followed by others. Which goes back to what I was sharing earlier, the importance of purchasing the book, reading the book, and then giving that book to someone. So let's have a little bit of a quiz here, cheese whiz here. We've found new cheese now. Now chew it, enjoy it. Thinking back, what did the little people have that the mice didn't have? One particular answer could be the ability to reflect on the lessons learned and apply it for the next time, as well as the opportunity to share it with others. Again, I recommend that you purchase the book, read it, and share it with a family member, friend, or colleague. Then at some time, share Who Moved the Cheese, your workbook journal. I know in this day of digitalization, a lot of us have apps and cell phones and very fancy computers. But I think it's something to be said about opening up a book and being able to not worry about having to have it on a charger. Being able to take it with you and open it up and enjoy it. That's what I like so much about the book. So, change can be positive. As a leader, we need to be flexible and adaptable throughout our journey. No one admits that they fear change. I think everyone around them does. Deny it. Old cheese is something like old behavior. New cheese is like new or renewed relationships. So we need to get rid of those old fears. We need to figure out how we live in the present. So I was sharing some things recently, even for myself. There's been a lot of opportunities for us to do additional education. And I have myself spent time learning new skills and being able to apply those new skills in my current job. There may be some there for you as well. So, as leaders, how do we handle change? It's only really about three or four things we need to think about here. One is that we need to think about our colleagues. Well, first we got to think about ourselves. So let's start there. Think about our colleagues. Think about our corporations, our employers. But more than that, let's think about our community. Our community of colleagues, family, and employers will be looking at us on how we deal with changes. They will have cues from us so we can live in fear or live in their presence to change. Change is often promoted by unseen forces. Think back. Has your cheese ever moved? Have you ever found new cheese? Again, another question in our journal that we should be looking at and writing down. Has your cheese ever moved? Have you ever found new cheese? There's another old saying, one door closes, another one opens. So I want to take a moment to share a email that was sent to me a couple days ago. And it was from Yvonne. And she wasn't able to actually make today's webinar because she got approved for her pre-op hip surgery. But one thing I wanted her to understand and remember was, number one, make sure that you're well first. We'll make sure that this is going to be recorded so that you can be shared with you later on. And she wrote back to say, yes, I will. Thanks for all the work that you do for IEEE. I was doubting my membership this year, but thanks to you, you've made a big difference in making me feel better about my IEEE membership. Which brings me to a quote that I carry pretty close to me. Volunteers do not necessarily have the time, they just have the heart, by Elizabeth Andrew. So let's talk about the writing on the wall. I think this is very important, so I hope that you're able to at least Google the handwriting on the wall on Who Moved My Cheese, or even take time to write some of those down right now. So, change happens. They keep moving the cheese. So true, so true. Anticipate change. Get ready for the cheese to move. Monitor the change. Smell the cheese often so you'll know when it's getting old. Adapt to change quickly. The quicker that we let go of old cheese, the sooner you can enjoy the new cheese. Change. Move with the cheese. And enjoy the cheese. Savor the adventure and enjoy the taste of new cheese. But be ready to change quickly and enjoy it again and again and again, because they keep moving the cheese. Now I want to talk to you about a couple of things, about some 8 job skills that are probably going to be needed in order to succeed in a post-COVID-19 world. This was an article that I found in Forbes magazine by Bernard Marr, who talks about those 8 skills. Number 1, adaptability and flexibility. It's going to be very important for all of us. Number 2, tech savviness. I think I can learn a thing or two about that in reference to making sure my video works for this webinar. Creativity and innovation. I think that's very important. We even have a creative mindset and looking at how can we adjust this problem creatively with maybe new technology or innovation. Critical thinking skills are going to be very important. Digital or coding skills are going to be very important. Number 6, leadership. Definitely very important. Number 7, emotional intelligence. Going to be very important. And number 8, a commitment to lifetime of learning. I think gone are the days of I'm going to be able to get my degree and I will not need any other education and it will fulfill me for the rest of my life. Gone are the days of just one certification that I need to get through in order for me to keep and maintain my job. I believe that this last one is very, very important for all of us. And the opportunity to continue to upgrade our skills is very, very important. And the great thing about a lot of some of the programs that I've seen have been offered for free. So at least one of my excuses are taken away. Only thing it takes is time. And that's another hard thing for us to think about and remember. I've had to get up extra early in the mornings in order for me to be able to do the training that I need in order to continue to update my skills. So, with that being said, I'd like to thank everyone for taking time out and participating in Who Moved the Cheese, my Cheese Workbook webinar. I welcome any of your comments and the opportunity for us to connect on LinkedIn. I also would like to encourage you to visit the IEEE Houston section website. We have a number of different webinars taking place, both in the past as well as upcoming. I will promise to make sure that I follow up with Daryl for us to send an update to everybody in reference to all the properly working links for the video, as well as a understanding of the of some other resources about Who Moved My Cheese. So, with that being said, Daryl, do we have any questions?
Right now, we do not. There's one comment, though. A person was asking about their certificates or PDHs.
Yes, sir. All the PDHs will be sent out completely within 24 to 48 hours upon completion. In order for you to receive a PDH certificate, you will have to attend the whole session, which is 1 hour. And I believe that the WebEx webinar actually tracks your time in attendance. So if you clocked in for 5 minutes and then dropped out, you will not be receiving a PDH certificate. But if you've been here throughout the whole time, you will. Even if you dropped out and had to come back in, the session automatically picks up where you were and it continues to add your time. Are there any other questions?
Currently, I do not see any other questions, so I want to say thank you, Chris, so much for doing this webinar for IEEE. Well, actually partnering with IEEE-USA for this webinar. Folks, they have my contact information if any questions come up, and I can certainly forward those to Chris. Or if you have his contact information, you can forward them directly to Chris as well. Chris, do you have any last words for us? Oh,
yes.
Hold on. There's a question did come through. Could you give an example of anticipating change?
Absolutely. One of the, at least for me, very early in my career, I used to work for a GE, and I remember going to a town hall meeting with Jack Welch, and he made a comment about the leaders of the company moving forward will have a certain, yes, I was going to say a certain degree, will have certain skill sets in order to lead the company moving forward. And one of those was Six Sigma. I didn't know a lot about it. I knew statistics, and it had been a couple years since I had taken some statistics, but I found a group of guys that heard that same message, and we started to work together. And so for about 4 months, on Saturdays, we would get together and go over different parts of the debate process. And so where one person had the strength about how to use statistics to define a area, we would teach each other. And so with that, when the edict finally came down, when Jack said that you will be a minimum of black belt certified, or excuse me, minimum of green belt certified, and if you were black belt certified, you would be able to move into an extra role higher. And so both myself and the colleagues that I was working with was able to both move up within the organization, as well as GE also gave us stock options for those that went to the black belt level. So I think the change is all around us. The question is, are we listening? And what are we prepared to do in order to embrace the change? Too many times we're the hall fighting the change. I've already shared right now the current environment that we're in. So it's very important for us to be able to have those skill sets. We talked about 8 of those. So my question to you is, what are you doing to prepare for tomorrow?
Cool. Chris, another person asked if you could share the link to the video. If you want to type that in the chat pod. I know someone actually earlier in the chat session, if you look in your chat pod, has shared a link to the video. But she was asking if you could, when you send out the certification, could you share a link to the video?
I definitely will. Definitely will.
Oh, someone just typed in a link to the video again. Someone actually asked the question: What is a great resource to learn the fundamentals of emotional intelligence?
Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one. There are a lot of different books and philosophies that are out there. Trying to think of one off the top of my head. There's one that Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of Effective People, is a good one. That's the one that immediately comes to mind for me. Another one that I really do like because it's a workbook as well is Leadership Challenge. And it takes a really good look at yourself as well as how to lead effectively.
Okay, cool. And I can add IEEE-USA. We did a past webinar with, I believe, Elizabeth Lyons, where she discussed the whole webinar on emotional intelligence. So if you want to go to the IEEE-USA website and look at our archived webinars for that, you can. That definitely may give you some resources as well. Another question came in. There are many different types of cheese.
Absolutely.
Yeah. How do you determine which cheese is best for you?
Oh, wow. I am from Texas, so I like a little bit of Monterey with my cheese. So I like a little bit of different seasonings in my cheese. I think that's the importance of making sure that you also have someone you can share that book with who can give you honest feedback about the direction that you're going in and the changes that you're about to make. So even today, as a older professional, I was going to say a young professional, but as an older professional, I still have mentors, and I have a close relationship with my mentors. And so let me talk about that a little bit more. As a mentee, it is my job and my responsibility to encourage that relationship with my mentor. It is not my mentor's responsibility for me, for him to stay in contact with me. As a mentee, it is my responsibility to seek my mentor's guidance. It's my responsibility to share my journey of where I am and where I'm trying to go. And so if you don't have a mentor or a loved one or a relative, I would definitely encourage you to definitely seek one. Because sometimes we may think that the cheese that we eat is beautiful and good, but it may be old cheese that we're eating. So I would encourage you to definitely reach out and find yourself a mentor, someone that you can trust within your circle that will give you honest feedback about where you want to go and the steps that you're taking to get there on your journey. Any more questions?
That was about it. I got a comment from someone looking for our contact information. My email address is, she should have received my email address on the webinar invitation. So you have my email address, and just send me an email and I can send you my different my phone number to the IEEE-USA office. In response to the emotional intelligence question, someone typed in the speed of thrust is a good one. I think that was a response to the emotional intelligence one. I'm not so I'm just throwing that out there. And I think that is about it with the questions. I want to thank everyone. I want to thank you, Chris, for oh, you want my phone number? Yeah, just send me an email and I'll send you my phone number. Chris, I want to thank you so much for doing this webinar and partnering with IEEE-USA to do it. I want to thank everyone for attending. The webinar is being recorded and will probably not be up on the IEEE-USA webinar site until Monday, but it will be up there. So just keep a lookout for it. And we thanks everyone for attending. And Chris, if you have any last words, feel free to share them with us.
No, I wish everybody success on their journey, and please be sure to keep a workbook journal. It is exactly what I said it is. It's a workbook journal. So you may be making changes along the way. But remember where you come from and where you're trying to get to. Enjoy the cheese.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much, everyone. And I am going to be ending the webinar. Thanks so much, Chris. Thank you, Chris, everyone. And we will see you later. Bye-bye.